Good afternoon. My name is Chris Rowena, Lead Communications Analyst of Health Workforce Development. We're excited that you've joined us today for the HCAI Certified Wellness Coach Employer Support Grant Program Updates webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to discuss a few housekeeping items. Number one, our webinar is hosted in Microsoft Teams. If you're not familiar with the platform, you can find the view controls and the chat feature in the menu bar at the top of your screen. Number two, the webinar will be recorded and posted on our website in approximately 7 to 10 business days. Number three, today the chat option will be open for asking questions during the Q&A session, which is at the end of this webinar. And number four, today's webinar will focus only on the HCAI Certified Wellness Coach Employer Support Grant Program updates. We understand that some of you may have questions regarding the broader Certified Wellness Coach program, and we are happy to answer those through email, but today we ask that you limit your questions to those focused on the Employer Support Grant. Additionally, due to an issue with the Microsoft Teams platform, we ask that you do not use the Q&A feature if you do see it, and instead use the chat function when it comes time for the Q&A session. Thank you for your understanding and your cooperation. Here's today's agenda. We have the housekeeping and introductions by myself. After that will be opening remarks from Sharmil Shah, our Assistant Deputy Director. Followed by an overview of the recent grants updates that we've added to this program by Ann Powell and Christian Jones. And then we will go into the question and answer session at the end, followed by some closing remarks again by Sharmil Shah. And with that, I am thrilled to introduce Sharmil Shah, the Assistant Deputy Director for Health Workforce.
All right. Thank you, Chris, so much for that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Wellness Coach Employer Support Grant Updates webinar. I am Dr. Sharmil Shah, the Assistant Deputy Director for the Office of Health Workforce Development here at HCAI, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you. As a reminder, for those of you who did not attend the first webinar, please visit our website for those materials, as we will not be covering specific grant information today. However, to ground us a little bit, I do want to do an important reminder that I shared in our first webinar, that youth in our communities are struggling with mental health challenges, and the need for prevention-related behavioral health services has never been more crucial as it is today. Children and youth have inadequate and inequitable access to the behavioral health care they need, and we are proud to have introduced this new profession that we believe will help address those challenges and be the upstream solution our youth so desperately need. Today's webinar will hopefully clarify any questions you may have had from our previous one. But before I jump into that, I wanted to kind of also ground us in the need for certified wellness coaches. As you all know, in 2021, the governor had announced the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, which made about $4.4 billion investment to transform the behavioral health system for children and youth. And this funding included establishing the certified wellness coach profession. So with the focus on children and youth from underserved communities, HCAI is committed through our programming to ensure that certified wellness coaches will contribute to the broader goal that children receive appropriate, timely, and effective behavioral health services and supports. Next slide, please. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Anne and Christian to get us started.
Thank you. I'll kick us off with this slide, and then we'll move into the sort of the meat of the discussion. This is to remind you of the purpose of the Wellness Coach Employer Support Grant Program. It's to provide resources to schools and school-based or school-linked organizations in order that you can hire wellness coaches and award stipends to wellness coach interns beginning in fall of 2024. It's also viewed as bridge funding in preparation for implementation by the Department of Healthcare Services of the new multi-payer fee schedule specifically for the wellness coach profession that will provide Medi-Cal coverage. And in addition, the implementation of commercial insurance reimbursement, again, for direct services provided by certified wellness coaches. beyond the period of this grant. Next slide. So I'm going to ask Christian Jones, my colleague in the policy section, to join me. And what we're going to do is we have a sort of a lengthy review of what we've done is we've looked at the many questions that have come into the website, and we've tried to kind of summarize our responses to them in a way that is organized by the topic. And with the next slide, Christian will begin. Oh, I'm sorry, Christian. I'll jump in to just remind people the application is open and it closes on March 15. We'll announce awards in May and execute grant agreements in August. With that, the next slide.
So here in this section, we're just going to be talking about the changes we've made to the grant guide as a result of feedback that we've received from you all. Here we have a new list of eligible applicants that remains largely the same, but we've included higher education institutions explicitly. So community colleges and four-year universities are eligible for this grant application. Next slide, please. And you can go ahead and present this one.
Okay, so we have published 3 addenda in order to clarify our intentions in the grant guide itself. So specific to applications, we want to be sure that applicants are clear that county offices of eds and local education agencies can apply in the same jurisdiction as long as they're not covering the same sites. So when we say same jurisdictions here, we mean sites or locations. And sites and locations is a term that we used interchangeably in the application. We should have stuck with one term, but you'll see sites and locations. The next thing is that we want the nonprofit community-based organizations that will seek funding to provide a letter or other documentation that demonstrates proof of a formal relationship between them and a school or school system. Next, more than one application may join together to submit a single application. An example that's been raised with us is a consortium that wants to form in a geographic area, and that is totally fine. And we'll talk about the particulars of that as we move on. And it is up to the organizations that are applying in different jurisdictions to figure out, or in the same jurisdiction, to figure out which sites will be included in their respective application, because we ask that nonprofits notify their school district or county office of ed that they intend to apply. They don't need permission, but they need to notify. Next slide. Another addendum was we had set up 2 different amounts, and the way we actually ended up writing the program for the application itself, it gives you a specific amount. So if you were going to hire 10 wellness coach 1s, you would see $69,500, and you would put in 10, and the application will calculate that for you in order to figure out how much your grant would be. And then there are different figures for different aspects of it: the interns, the employee supervision, and intern supervision as well. Next slide. Last addenda is to clarify that award procedures include prioritization of mental health, professional shortage areas, and rural locations. And what this means is that when we go to evaluate all the applications, we will be looking to prioritize the distribution of funds in areas of the state where there is a serious shortage of mental health professionals as an indicator of shortage of service access. As well as we know there is a shortage of resources in rural locations as well. Next slide. All right, with that, we will kick it off between Christian and I. Next slide. And with that, Christian.
Yeah, I just want to briefly note, I did see someone's hand raised. We will be having Q&A at the end of the webinar, and we'll be opening up the chat at some point for you to put your questions. Here, we're going to be going through the many questions we've received, either at the initial webinar or questions that have been submitted to us through our Wellness Coach inbox, which we encourage you to make use of after the webinar. The first question I want to go through is what is meant by a school-based and school-linked community-based organization? A school-based organization is an organization that has a formal relationship with a school and offers its services at that school site. A school-linked CBO has a formal relationship with the school and offers services at a location that is not that school site, but does have a relationship with that school. What constitutes this formal relationship? A formal relationship between a CBO and a school is where the CBO is providing behavioral health services to students at that school, whether that be at the school site or at a location off the school site. And this is recognized in the form of a letter or some other documentation from that school site. Next slide, please.
What? Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So in our application, we use the word site and location, and we're sorry about this. We should have used the same term, but we were asked what is the distinction between a site and a location, and we use these terms interchangeably. They refer to the addresses where CWCs or certified wellness coaches will provide services, but don't get mixed up by the wording. They're the same thing. We were also asked what is a CWC intern? A certified wellness coach intern is an individual who is certified, but has not yet completed the required hours to be a CWC1 or CWC2. If they have 150 or more hours or 300 or more hours, they can be a registered CWC1 or a registered CWC2. Individuals in these categories will have 1 year to complete their remaining hours, and they'll have the distinction from their certification removed, and they will be just a certified wellness coach. The internships we offer through this funding is intended to provide hours to these individuals. Next slide. Go ahead, Ann. Ann, you're muted.
Thank you. A question was raised about whether or not community-based organizations were eligible only if they are nonprofit. And that is true. They must be a nonprofit and school-linked or school-based. Another question was raised about non-public eligible schools. And this grant is for public schools, and that does include public charter schools. Also, eligibility is limited to schools, but also to our community-based, school-based, and school-linked partners. Next slide. FQHCs are eligible. There was a question about that, providing, again, that they are school-linked or school-based. Some FQHCs do have formal relationships while others do not. Are colleges, including Title V programs, eligible to apply? Title V is a reference to being a Latin distinguished university. And yes, they, as well as other colleges and public colleges and universities, are eligible to, under this grant, for funds to employ wellness coaches that can serve their student body through age 25. And then finally, are current employees eligible for funding if they become a wellness coach? This is really important because we recognize that in some entities, they have personnel that have many of the features of a wellness coach, as well as more importantly, they have the training necessary to become certified. And I'll take a moment here to mention for you that the Wellness Coach certification site is open. And I'll ask one of my colleagues to put the website for .org in the chat when we open the chat. And you can go to that site to reach the certification website. Next slide.
We received a question about the ability to pass through funds, and a COE can pass through funds to its own school sites. It can pass through funds to outside organizations that they contract with, but they must identify the school sites that will be served by CWCs in their application, whether they are directly employing these CWCs or they're passing through the funds. We received a question about whether an LEA can apply if their COE is also applying. Yes, as long as the COE is not requesting funds for that specific school site, LEAs are required to collaborate with county offices of education, and they have to submit a letter confirming that their respective county office is not applying for funds on their behalf. We do not want a county office of ed and a school site double dipping and receiving funds for the same exact site. We received a question, what if our application includes more than 150 sites or locations? This is important because our application on a technical basis only supports the input of 150 sites. If you have more than 150 sites, please contact us. We have a way to support you so that you can apply for this grant. But please do not only put 150 sites if you actually serve more than that. Next slide. Can an application be submitted with a countywide consortium of LEAs and community-based organizations? Yes, but crucially, only one organization can apply on behalf of the consortium. There can only be one organization that is the applicant per application. A few things to note, a COE can apply on behalf of all of its LEAs. This was something that we envisioned from the start. And they can also contract with community-based organizations to perform obligations under the grant agreement. And when there are two or more applicants that are planning to provide CWC services at the same site, those parties need to collaborate to determine which applicant will include that site in their application. Next slide. And you're on mute.
Sorry about that. What if the consortium includes multiple counties? Who should apply? Very much like what Christian just described, we support and encourage multi-county consortium. It's up to the group who applies, though, as to who will be the responsible lead agency on the application. And that applicant will be held to the terms of the grant agreement. They're not required to be the employer of record, though, for all of the CWCs, all the certified wellness coaches. We expect that you may contract or subcontract with other entities in your consortium to do so. HCAI also recommends that the applicant be a county office of education or a local education agency. And that's because if a CBO were to apply as the lead, they would be required to provide proof of their relationship with the LEAs and COEs in the form of a letter. That, let me clarify that that's a letter or documentation of that relationship. That doesn't go away just because you're part of a collaboration. Next slide. When completing the site details that are articulated on page 2 of the application, it requires adding a site. Can we add a school district or LEA, or must it be a specific school given you asked for Title I status? The answer is we want the exact name and address of each site that where certified wellness services will be offered. If you don't have an exact site at this moment, please list your best assumption. And if site changes were to take place once you have the funds in hand, we will ask you to communicate those changes to us during the regular reporting process that will be laid out to the grantees. Next, if one of the partnering districts wants to hire certified wellness coaches, but is not 100% certain yet at which site that coach will work, can they still apply with the COE? And how is this to be indicated on the grant application? Again, your best assumption of where the wellness coach services will be offered is what you should put on that list on site details on page 2 of the application. Next slide.
We received a question about Head Start documentation. No matter what kind of applicant you are, at the end of the application, there'll be a box that says Head Start documentation. And this may cause you confusion. This is the default. No matter what kind of sites you have, you will see this. But if you have not listed a Head Start location on your application, you are not required to upload a document in that section. Next slide. Funding questions. So does the salary amount for CWCs include benefits? Yes, the amounts listed in the grant guide are the fully loaded costs associated with hiring CWCs. Can costs outside of salary, benefits, and supervision be supported with grant funds? An example of this might be funds associated with the hiring process. Yes, the grant includes a 10% indirect cost category for such expenses. Can the same individuals receive an intern stipend and an employee salary? Yes, as long as they're not receiving both stipends at the same time. The salary portion of the stipend must correspond to at least 10 months of employment during the grant period. Do all CWC positions need to be filled upon the start of the grant agreement? No. These positions can be hired over the course of the grant period. However, you can only seek reimbursement for the number of CWCs hired. Payments are made in arrears after the first initial payment. Next slide.
When can prospective wellness coaches begin to apply for certification? As I mentioned earlier, that certification website is now up and live, and you can go to this website to find the link to the certification website. Next slide. Who can supervise certified wellness coaches? This comes up often, and we believe that it is in the purview of the hiring agency to determine how best to supervise these personnel. HCAI's approach is to support the autonomy of counties and school districts to determine what is best for them while they adhere to their laws and regulations. And it is the employer's responsibility to ensure that supervision meets local, state, and federal requirements. Next slide.
This is a question we received in the first webinar, but this is something that we want to reiterate. How does the grant guide scoring criteria serve rural organizations that may only be hiring a small number of wellness coaches? We've included section H of our grant guide. I encourage anybody whom this applies to go read that section. But it allows us to favor applicants that represent geographic areas that are not represented by other applicants. If we determine that our initial scoring criteria systemically favor certain geographic regions, we can adjust our process to achieve statewide distribution of the grant funds. It is the intention of HCAI to make sure that the whole state of California is served by the grant. If our county does not have a Medi-Cal threshold language, will that be taken into consideration when scoring the application? For purposes of scoring, we use statewide Medi-Cal threshold languages. We do not use county-specific languages. Next slide. For the purposes of answering and scoring DEI readiness on the grant application, is the scoring based on all school sites, included in the application as one entity, or based on individual school site data? If you support these DEI readiness initiatives that are listed in the grant application, if you support them at all, just select yes. If you don't currently offer these, we have a drop down for you to project when you will support these. Next question. Sorry, go ahead, Ann.
How do we complete the question, how many languages does your staff speak across all sites? Is this asking if there are any staff that speak those languages or the total number of staff that speak each language? Our approach is to say that for each language listed, indicate the total number of your current staff that speak that language. So you are providing a cumulative count regardless of their location throughout your grant region. You can do this by highlighting the 0 and replacing it with a number or putting a number after the 0. For example, 02. If you do not have a language, have staff speaking a specific language, move on to the next language that's appropriate. So you may have 5 who speak Spanish, you'd put 5 in that section. Farsi, maybe you have 1 person speaking Farsi. And as I said, you do not have to do anything if your staff do not speak any other languages. Just continue in the application. There is no penalty. However, there are points that are provided to applicants who have staff who speak non-English languages. How do I estimate what languages the certified wellness coaches will speak if we haven't hired them yet? This question refers that we are asking regarding language is with regard to your current staff only, not asking you to project what you expect would be the languages of future certified wellness coaches that are hired. Next slide. With this, I'll turn it back to Christian.
Thank you, Ann and Christian. As you can see, our team has put a lot of work into this program, and we're really excited that you've joined us today to learn more. We are transitioning to our question and answer session, and the chat option is now accessible in the menu bar at the top of your screen. Again, due to Microsoft's Teams platform issue, we ask that you do not use the Q&A feature. Please do use the chat function to ask your questions. We will answer the questions in the order that they are received, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions that you have today. And starting us off here, I will go to the questions. We currently have case managers, BA required. Can these positions be converted to wellness coaches and pay their salaries or part of them?
Yes, they could qualify, but again, it depends on the degree in which they hold the bachelor. And that's why it's very important for you to visit the cawellnesscoach.org website so that you can see what the specific degrees are that for which they would qualify to become certified. I want to go back early in the application, in the chat. There's a question as to whether a school district is an example of an LEA. Yes, we tend to use those terms interchangeably. So yes.
So the school district is an example of an LEA.
Okay, the next question is, can you please elaborate on what needs to be included on a letter of sustainability? It is our practice at HCAI that you are committed to sustaining the activities that you undertake in a grant program when the grant has expired. What's fortunate here is that Medi-Cal reimbursement in particular, but also private insurance will be available when the wellness coach provider coverage is made available through something called the state plan amendment under Medi-Cal. So we anticipate that in fact, there will be a way to sustain this workforce by and large. We don't have control over DHCS and their development of the rates, but we are trying to work closely with them to make sure that it is an adequate amount. You want to trade off with me, Kristen?
Sure. Are we just running down the list, or Chris, are you reading them to us? Yes, we're
So I
running
had
down.
I had an issue there. I can keep reading them.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Okay. All right. Would an existing MOU between a CBO and a school suffice?
I see that that's the same person who asked the previous question. That would suffice if what you're talking about is a recognition of a formal relationship between a CBO and a school, but it would not suffice for a letter of sustainability. They're two separate things. A letter of sustainability is what Anne just described.
Right. Yeah, an MOU is the kind of documentation we're talking about when we talk about formal relationship.
All right, thank you. Do we only count languages of behavioral health staff or all staff on each site?
This is for all staff on the site. And it's not at each site, it's across your entire organization.
Okay, I think that answers the next question as well. All staff. Okay. By when must current employees have their CWC cleared?
By the time that they're hired. So by the time we are paying you in the funding category for a CWC stipend, they need to be certified. So if you intend to have them be paid through that internship stipend at the start of the grant period when the grant executes, then they need to be certified at the beginning when the grant is executed.
Thank you, Christian. Is there a template or guidance for the letter of sustainability?
I will look, because we do require it in other programs, I can give you one that shows how it would be at a university who's expanding enrollment of like social workers, and that might give you a feel for what would be in a sustainability letter. So yes, we'll do that. We'll post that as part of a future document on our website.
All right, thank you, Anne. What does the documentation need to include for site, Head Start, and Title I verification?
I'll leave that for you, Anne.
Thank you. So we want something that indicates whether it's a copy of your license or a communication with the California Department of Education, or your county office of education that acknowledges you are Head Start or Title I.
And I'm going to add a follow on. Is there any other Title I documentation that is needed?
No, just a simple acknowledgement that you hold that status.
Perfect, thank you. I'll take this one. Where can we access presentation slides, recordings, and FAQ? They are on our website, and we're posting links in the chat for those. Additionally, we will email those out to webinar attendees as well. So typically within 7 to 10 business days, we get the recordings back on the page after we make them ADA compliant, and then we'll get those posted and sent out to you. All right, next question. Our schools were not listed on the Title I dropdown. What is needed to upload for verification?
I'll take that. Like I mentioned before, if you indicate you are a Title I, there's a field in which you can enter the name of your school, and you will be queried at the end to provide documentation, as I had just described. Anything that notes the names of your campuses or sites and their Title I status. And we recognize that there are multiple sites in an LEA or school district that have Title I, and feel free to just upload a list of those with some documentation that shows us the kind of thing that you hold, showing your status. I hope that makes sense.
All right, thank you, Anne. Next question. This is a clarification. For CBO, do we need both letters or agreements from the district and County of Education, or just one, as one area said it both, but another area said just one?
I think that's a you question, Ann.
Yeah, I'm trying to interpret the question. Thank you. So this questioner, Michael Miller, what I read here, you're asking is, do you need both letters or agreements? I think one or the other for each arrangement is fine, whatever is easiest for you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, next question. When I looked at the grant application, it looked like it was for scholarships only for wellness coaches. What does the grant cover? Should I as a PPS get a certification in wellness coaching?
I will say the grant covers supervision of wellness coaches. It also covers a salary stipend for wellness coaches, and we also cover a stipend for interns, and we also cover indirect costs associated with that. We will be covering scholarships for wellness coaches in a separate program. We're very excited about that. We'll be revealing that at some point. You as a PPS, should you get a certification in wellness coaching? Sort of a separate question. But yes, you can if you wish, if you're qualified. But you could also qualify as a supervisor of a wellness coach.
Let me jump in and also add to what Christian described, is that it's not necessary that you have certification to supervise wellness coaches.
Yes, thank you for that.
All right, thank you. I believe we've answered this question before. For languages, we do consider all staff as counting towards that question. Next one, for current employees, do you suggest they wait until May 2024 to begin their CWC or CWC intern training? I believe I read that in an announcement, but I'm not sure that is current guidance.
Let me answer this. Funds can only be used prospectively. So that is to say that if you get the executed award in August, you cannot go back and be paying for the work of interns or employees that took place before the grant was executed. So use that in your judgment as to when you want to start employing or providing internship training.
Thank you, Anne. Next question. This is a technical question. We have completed up to the language page. However, there is no next button to continue, and we don't see that we missed anything.
I can take this one. What I would suggest is one that you email us at our wellness coach inbox. But on that specific page, to make the next button appear, you have to have the same amount of sites entered on that screen as you said you would have on the previous page. If those things do not match, the next button will not appear, and that's a common mistake in the application. If that doesn't help, then please email us.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. All right. This next question. There are close to 400 school sites covered by my organization. Do we have to upload info site by site on the language page at the top where it says add site?
No, the language is looking for organization-wide. It's not by site. Thank you.
Yeah. I will also add that if you have over 400 school sites that you're looking to input into the application only takes 150 school sites. That's not us imposing that. That's just a technical issue with the application. Please email us at the Wellness Coach inbox that we will put up at the end of the webinar so that we can assist you.
And I'll add a little more to Christians to say, please do not fill in those fields. Please contact us first.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Next question. If you are a COE, what would you upload for the COE partnership?
In the you will have may or may not, and I apologize if we've overlooked this. we went back, and in the brief narrative at the very beginning of the application, where it asks you for a brief description of your program, we have added a phrase there asking you for the name of your partnerships. And all we're asking for you to do is just list who is in your collaborative or consortium in that narrative in the very beginning of the application. If you forwarded to a point in the application where you've passed that, don't worry, you can always go back to earlier pages. None of your work is lost when you do that. So don't hesitate to go back to the earlier part of the application to upload the name of those organizations. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Anne. If a district has unpaid interns for BA degrees, can you convert these positions to paid internships? Poorer districts often can't pay interns, but they would be able to recruit if they could pay stipends.
You could certainly do that as long as the paid internship position that you're switching to is for registered certified wellness coaches and is in line with the grant. But yes, we would encourage you to do that if that's possible.
Okay. Next question. When you open the grant application, does it save as you go? How long is the application? I didn't want to open it yet.
Okay. Yes, your work is saved as you go. Don't worry at all. It's a little tricky going, as Christian was describing, between the page where you put in the number of sites and then the next page where it asks the actual list of those sites. And as he said, if you run into difficulties there, please email us. We'll get back with you right away. We can see your applications in our system, and we have staff that can assist you with that. But absolutely feel free to open it. You could even begin to fill it out and look and get a sense for the process as you go.
Perfect, thank you. Is there a way to view the full application without having to click through the online portal? This would be helpful in collecting the various data required for the application.
We appreciate this problem, and it's not possible for us at this point to come up with a full application view for you before you begin the application. But as I mentioned earlier, it's fine to go ahead and start filling it out and stop and come back to it when you've got the data you need to gather together. We do probably the most important thing for anyone to know in this application is the sites where you're going to you intend to place wellness coaches.
All right, thank you. Next question. So providers must be Medi-Cal certified in order to apply?
No, we only require that you have the ability to bill Medi-Cal on behalf of employees. In January 2025, we put that to correspond with the anticipated launch of the multi-payer fee schedule. But as you apply, that requirement that's not true as you apply. It's only true in January 2025.
All right.
Yes. And I want to add to that we recognize that there are funding streams at DHCS working with school districts. They had cohort 1 and soon announcing cohort 2. And the intention, we are told by DHCS that they will complete the process of working with any interested school district and COE to get you ready for Medi-Cal billing by January of 2025.
All right, thank you, Ann. If current staff meet the qualifications of a CWC and are providing activities of a wellness coach that is billed to Medi-Cal, can they be included in the grant?
Yes, these are the people we were mentioning earlier in our discussion about seeing if they are qualified. as a certified wellness coach and seeking certification. And we would encourage you to go ahead and start that process so that you are certain to have those, to know you have those staff qualified and in place to start providing these services where you're awarded a grant.
All right, thank you. How will the parameters of field experience be defined and measured as LEAs start to explore which staff may be eligible for CWC 1 and 2 status?
So field experience is made up of two things. One is your field practicum that you get while you're getting your education, and the other is work experience. And so we have the broad term field experience to cover both.
And just to add on, I want to read what we have in our certification requirements. Experience must be in mental health, substance use addiction, social work, and or child welfare at school-linked, school-based organizations, nonprofits, community organizations, and or clinics or health centers.
Right.
All right, thank you. Next question, can we fund existing positions that we plan on certifying, or will that be considered supplanting?
That is not supplanting. We encourage you to do that. We want to align staff in such a way that they are positioned for the transition to Medi-Cal when that opportunity becomes available next January. The other thing that I did have a thought here. No, I've lost it. Sorry. But yes, it's not considered supplanting.
All right, thank you. As a reminder, we do have links posted in the chat space. You can see the cawellnesscoach.org link posted there. An important website to visit if this is something you're interested in. Next question, for the languages page, is it current district staff? If so, would it be the same numbers for all sites listed? And I think that's the specific differentiator on this question is, you know, we've already answered the language question, but how does that apply to all sites?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Could you restate the question again, Chris?
Yeah. Back to the languages page. They're asking, is it current district staff? If so, would it be the same numbers for all sites listed? So each site would have the exact same numbers?
I'm slightly confused by the question, but the way the language question works is prior to that, you will input the amount of employees that are at each site. So you'll tell us how much staff are at each individual site. The language question only refers to your organization as a whole, and you will give us those numbers per language. So if you have 1,000 employees, for example, and 55 of them speak Spanish, you will tell us that 55 of your employees speak Spanish. But the language question is not site specific. It's across your entire organization.
I think that's what the question was really getting at. So perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Clarification on the letter of sustainability requirements. If we are applying as a CBO, does the letter need to come from our partner school districts, or can this be written by our own executive leadership?
It needs to come from your school district.
Okay. Question on Title I and Head Start verification. Is that for every site?
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with the questions so I can read them.
It is for every site. For every Title I site that you list, they need to be verified. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to have one document for each site. You might verify all of them on one singular document with one proof. But for every Title I site that you have, they have to be verified.
This and to build on what Kristen is saying, if you refer back to the grant guide, we give you we look at the distribution of or the percentage of school sites that are Title I as part of our scoring criteria for evaluating each application. And so in order to earn points for your status, Title I status of your sites, you need to have more than 49% to earn any points of the sites you provide in your application. So that's why I suggested earlier, and Christian just restated, that you give us a list of all your sites that are Title I's and include a second or third page if you want, that shows the actual document as an example of what each site receives, that demonstrates their Title I status. It's the same with Head Start programs.
All right, thank you. Next question. If we are sure about selecting CWC 1s or 2s, can we select 2 for the application and amend if needed? I'm guessing this is unsure.
So let me jump in here. Yes, you could do that. I would ask that you think long and hard about that, because if 10 grantees or 10 applicants seek that higher level of funding, the money won't go as far. And so we would hope that you would think about that carefully when you figure out your needs. If you do adjust it later, we would appreciate a notification of that, and we will get that information each 6 months from you to find out what level of wellness coach you hired, certified wellness coach, that is. And actual reimbursement is based on payments to you past the upfront 25% award are based on actual costs. In accounting term, it's called arrears. I hope that helps answer that question.
All right. Thank you. And this will be the last question and that we're going to be able to offer, and then we'll address how we can get the rest of the questions asked here. Would a printout of the California schools dashboard showing Title I status suffice as documentation?
Yes. Perfect.
All right. Well, we are running out of time for today, and we know that there are a lot of questions out there. And so one of the things that we are going to do is we are going to be scheduling an additional office hours webinar where we will be just available to answer questions. We won't have any other presentation agenda. And so be looking for more information to follow on that. We will get that out to everybody who joined this session and the broader list as well. Thank you all for your participation in the question and answer session. Great questions as always. In the meantime, as you're waiting for the follow-on office hours webinar, please email your questions to wellnesscoach@hci.ca.gov. And as a reminder, we will be posting the recording of this webinar and the slide deck on our website in approximately 7 to 10 business days. And now Dr. Sharmil Shah will provide some closing remarks.
If before Sharmil starts, let me just say one last comment. I'll jump in. I see there are a lot of questions that remain that we haven't addressed. We are probably going to issue a second FAQ and try to address your questions as follow-up. So you will get your answers. And then, of course, the office hours that Chris mentioned. Dr. Shah.
Thank you, Anne. So again, thank you to our Wellness Coach team, and again to all of you for spending your valuable time with us today. We are very hopeful that you see the impact that the Certified Wellness Coach can make, and after today have received our important updates and clarification on your questions. On behalf of our team, myself, and HCAI Executive Leadership, we thank you. I will now turn it over to Chris, our facilitator, to wrap us up.
All right, thank you, Dr. Shah. We appreciate everybody joining us today to learn more about the HCAI Certified Wellness Coach Employer Support Grant Program. We are excited to be able to offer it today. We really do encourage you to go to our website to discover all of the great resources that HCAI offers, not just for wellness coaches, but all of the other things that we do. As a reminder, the application cycle does close March 15th. Thank you so much for attending. And with that, we conclude today's webinar. Have a wonderful day.